Okay, anyone that's in here, can you just let me know if you can hear me, please? Just so I know the microphone's working okay. Can anyone hear me? Oh, great, you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, I can hear it. It took me a minute to get in. You know how that is.
Yeah, I've had issues with mine now, as I was saying before about my laptop. So I got the iPad ready to start and it said didn't have the most up-to-date version of something to work. So I'm now running it off my phone. So
me too.
I think we're good.
I had that same issue and I forgot about I had to have the headphones. So I've
just had to run and find a different pair of headphones that connected to my phone. So that's why I was a couple of minutes late. So now I'm a bit like, all hot from running around, but we're all good. We're in. Okay, I'm just going to give a couple of minutes just to let other people join in that are coming on to listen live as well. And then we'll get started. I think there's a way as well before I publish this that I can like edit out all the beginning bits somehow. We'll work that one out. So we just need Billie to call in as well. I'm sure I saw her join.
Yes, she entered.
Yeah, she's up.
Does
she's
she
here.
know she?
Billie, do you know how to call in? Oh, there we go. She's calling.
Okay.
Connect. There we go. Hello.
Oh, people. No, hang on a minute. I can't be talking through the way station. Y'all trying to get me to go to jail. Yeah, I can hear y'all just fine.
Can you get that noise down out of our ear?
What noise? What, my mouth?
That ain't happening.
No, it's that truck, I guess.
Oh, it's the truck.
No, I'm inside the truck with my Bluetooth on. Yeah, some folks got to work. Y'all know I'm always working. My office is going. Well, Mama, the windows are up. I don't even got the AC on high, and I'm in Florida about to melt. Yeah, the
Let's
windows
hope
are
you
up.
don't melt and roll out that seat.
I reckon it's hot. It's like 93 degrees, man.
Oh, wow. That's it. The noise has gone down a little bit there.
Like what, 34 Celsius over there?
Yeah, that's what we run on. Yeah. The Celsius.
I've been learning that Celsius.
You trying to act like you smart?
I gotta act.
Okay, right, we'll get started then. So thank you for listening to the Guy's Voice Podbean podcast. This will be available on Spotify and Apple. And if anyone's got any other suggestions of where to publish it, then just send me a message and let me know. Before I hand over to two very lovely ladies, I just want to ask anybody that isn't already in the Guy's Voice Facebook group if they would please look us up on there and come and join us. There's so much information about Guy's case on the group. And also in the group is the link to the petition. This petition is really, really, really important that we get as many signatures on it as possible, because it will be being sent to the Supreme Court justices, each one of them, at the same time that Guy's appeal goes in. So it's going to give them a lot more information on Guy's case. So the more signatures on that, then the better. So look us up on Facebook, Guy's Voice, and the link to the petition is in the group as well. So today joining us, we have got the lovely Jean Usher and Billie Usher. Jean is Guy's grandmother and Billie is Guy's auntie. They were both around when Guy was growing up, a big part of Guy's life growing up. So Billie's going to talk about Guy from years ago and hopefully reveal some embarrassing stories maybe about Guy when he was growing up. Fingers crossed. And Jean's going to be talking about Guy's case. So I'm going to hand over to Billie first to tell us about Guy from like his younger years. Are you not ready?
Y'all go ahead. Go ahead and talk. I just got to get through this little bitty way station out here in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go first then, Jean? And we'll let Billie do what she's got to do.
Okay, I can go ahead and start. First, I'll say my disclaimer. There's a lot of things that I wanted to say on here. Some of them I can prove, some of them I can't. A lot of them are my opinions about the way things went. There's some things I want to read that were factual, but I have a lot of opinions about some of the stuffs that are actual factual. And this was August 29th in 2009, and I got down there about 9 or 9:30, I believe it was, and I was not allowed to see Guy until September the 2nd. This was when his charade for his bond hearing started about the ankle monitor, which he didn't get it until September the 4th. My opinion, and the rumor was they wanted to see if he'd tell me something, and there was 2 pieces of evidence, according to the wonderful Matt Doran, that they needed to get on him or had on him. Anyway, the rumor was it came from that 911 that call on that bracelet that they heard. Put the monitor on Guy. Tyler and me sat and waited out in the waiting hot sun, South Georgia hot sun, September, still hot. Waiting for him to come out. It took quite some time. Anyway, once Guy got in the truck and we left, they followed us home to where my property, where Eric was living at the time. We were all in the house, and then came the police knock on the door. They came, demanded Guy go out and put his hands behind his back. I asked them what was going on, what was the reason. They told me they did not know. All they knew was the bond was revoked and they were taking him to jail. Well, later I learned that once they took him back to the jail, the cops went in and charged him with the murders, which I didn't know that at the time. All I know is, and while we were standing out in the yard, they were waiting for him to, I asked them what they were waiting for because they were standing out there. This was a fenced yard, and they told me I better not go out that yard. Here's more than a dozen cops standing out here with guns on all of us. Cop cars everywhere, the street blocked off both sides, and yet they had to wait for somebody to come take Guy to jail. Now, that makes no sense to me. Out of all those cops and all those cop cars, somebody could have carried him to the jail. Officers Scott and Evans also went to Eric's house. This is how they lie to you, and it's perfectly legal for the cops to lie to you. Went to Eric's house, not at this particular time, but a later time, and told him they had Guy on video recording saying that he took Guy over to the trailer park and dropped him off. Well, of course, Eric being Eric and himself, he cussed them out and told them to leave. So he knew better than that. I had to go to my sister's house. A friend notified me that Matt Doran was having a press conference at 9 o'clock that night. So I had to go to my sister's house and listen to the press conference, which Matt Doran did his grand stuff. And I know it was online. I'm not sure where it was, but I know I watched it online also if you're interested in seeing this. But to get back to some of the comments for the jury, I don't know how many people have watched the documentary that the BBC made, but I think he did a wonderful job. John did a wonderful job on this documentary. Of course, he could not put in everything he was going to. The trial lasted 8 days, so of course in an hour or so he could not get everything in, but I think he did a wonderful job. He and Abby did a wonderful job on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, to start with, number 32, one of the jurors, his comment about Guy on the video, BBC video, if you saw that, he said Guy showed no remorse. He was hollow. He was stone-faced, was his first impression. No feelings. He was just for himself. Matter of fact, he held his head down and grinned a little bit. Well, to me, this shows that this man had Guy guilty when he went into the courtroom.
Yeah.
His first impression. And if your head is down, how is somebody going to tell if you're grinning, if you're grimacing, or if you're telling somebody in choice words what they can do? But anyway, and he also said, how did he know they were beat to death? Well, it's obvious from the 911 calls that's been played multiple times. I don't know if you all have heard it, but if not, you need to listen to it. Guy specifically said when they asked him about it, he said it looked like they were beaten to death. He didn't know. I don't know, man. It looked like they were beaten to death.
Yeah.
Also, in the interview that the police are doing with him, Mike Owens and Lynn Davis, he says his daddy's, Guy Sr.'s face did not look like him. Almost couldn't recognize him. So to me, that definitely looks like beat to death, and I think to most anybody with any common sense, that would make you think they were beat to death. I'm trying to look at my notes. I got them a little.
That's okay.
Number 3, one of the jurors that were number 3, was confused most of the time during the trial, and she wished he would have paid attention. Well, if she's confused most of the time, how did she know what was going on? Number 4 didn't know why they wanted her in there so bad. She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know what was going on. So, to me, these 3 people should be enough to get another trial based on them alone. You want someone like this determining if you live or die. Excuse me. Put yourself in Guy's place. Is this somebody that sounds like they're capable of deciding if somebody lives or dies? It does not to me.
No.
And the foreman, God help him, I think he was a very smart man, but I don't think he had common sense one. He said he was very religious, strong in his faith, strong enough to stand up to anything that happens in a deliberation room. An alibi was extremely important to him. Prosecution has to convince him 100% that Guy was guilty. One of the complaints about Juror 152, who they threw off, was him and the foreman was having conflict, and it got real heated in there. So I guess he was strong enough to stand up to anybody in the deliberation room, because he ended up being partially responsible for getting this guy thrown off. There again, an alibi. Guy does not have to prove his innocence. The prosecution does, which that is in the judge's charge to the jurors before they get started, which I have a few comments about that too. During the jury selection process, every one of them in there that were questioned about the jury agreed they would solely base their decision on evidence presented in this courtroom. We'll be back to that again later. They were all asked about were they related to us and blah, 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 all the questions I guess they normally ask. Did they know us? Were they friends with us? Did they work with us? Excuse me. And the ones that knew us or had worked with us, had worked with family members. One guy had worked with Guy's mama. They were thrown off the jury. They were not selected. But they all admit that I got to get something to drink.
That's okay.
That were all admitted they would base their own evidence in the courtroom.
You grab a drink. Do you want to grab your drink?
That's what I'm doing.
You got one there.
Choke to death if I don't. I meant to do it before I started because I knew that would happen.
Oh, bless you.
But I was talking to Billy and I actually forgot that.
She's like, oh,
Shut
crap,
up.
it's 3:01. Bye, I gotta go. Click.
The debates are starting.
Yeah.
While Jean just has a drink, I'll just quickly say, Jean mentioned about the 911 call. That I did play that on episode 1. So for anyone that's joined us for episode 2 but hasn't heard episode 1, you can hear the 911 call on episode 1 as well. So, all right.
And all the police that they questioned in regard to this jury selection, everybody who was a former police officer or had been whatever, everyone said they would agree with the police regardless of what they heard. So those they basically had to throw off. But a lot of people, and I used to be one of them myself, a lot of people assume if a person's arrested, they must be guilty because law enforcement has to have evidence to arrest them. Well, I've learned a lot since this case started about the judicial system. Back to Caroline Small, who happened in 2010, Sasser case, who happened after that, and Sasser is one of the ones that killed Caroline Small and bragged about her head exploding, and how Jackie Johnson went all out to protect them. Matt Doran was involved also. So, of course, they got away with it, and you see things went from bad to worse. JBJ, John B. Johnson, the illustrious district attorney, said the barrel of the shotgun was missing. That was used to kill everyone. At least you can argue that. To me, that says that he knew the barrel wasn't used, but you can argue that. Talking about cookie crumbs, this being a circumstantial case, there was no direct evidence, which, according to the Knox's group, there was no evidence that put Guy there. But John B. Johnson went all out of his way to say that Guy was the only one that had the opportunity, the intent, and motive to kill these people with this shotgun barrel that you can at least argue. Matt Doran, all these 4 years before Guy went to trial, absolutely certain what happened, and absolutely certain how it happened, and absolutely certain that Guy did it by himself. And when he was interviewed during court, he was still certain he did it by himself. But the jury had to determine that. That was mighty big of him, as he intimidated the jury. And John B. Johnson, you can tell from his demeanor on that documentary, he was an arrogant person. He does not keep track of his wins and losses, but he's never lost a death penalty case. And that could be true. I don't know the stats on that. However, I do know that I was told that he has been investigated for hiding evidence for at least 3 different times, but he always gets off. Imagine how that happens. It's because the group all stands behind him and they all stick together. He makes a big issue out of Guy's DNA being in that house. Nobody else in several counties had DNA in that house but Guy. Well, Guy lived there. Why wouldn't his DNA be in that house?
That's
I mean,
just
this
crazy.
is just common sense. This is common sense stuff.
It would
If
be
you've
more
got common
like
sense.
it would be more worrying if his DNA wasn't in the house, because you'd be like, well, where is your DNA? You know, you live there,
Exactly.
so where's your DNA? But
I
yet to
feel
use it that it's there.
Well,
I feel the same
not
way
everybody's
about the
got
alibi
common
thing.
sense.
Hold on, Billy. Hold on. I feel the same way about the alibi. Most of the time people has an alibi, or a lot of the times they're the ones that's guilty. They set themselves up an alibi. So if
Yes,
people have an
yeah.
ironclad alibi, that makes me more interested in thinking they're guilty than not. Now, how many people are going to remember? I can't remember everything I did yesterday step by step. I might can tell you I did this, and this, but then when I think about it, I might realize, no, I did this before I did that. And that was the same way a Guy. I mean, he is and was a normal person.
Yeah.
The foreman was mighty nice. He said he thought the 911 tape sounded genuine, and Guy had a lot of grief, which it sounded genuine to me. And during the interview, Lynn Davis, during the police interview with Harrison and Mike Owens, told dispatcher, looked like they were beaten to death. He asked him what made him think like that, Lynn Davis did, and he said, I saw my dad and it didn't look like him. It looked like something tore his face up. And that, why would you think they were shot? What would make you think that was a gunshot? It just defies my mind. Stalvey, the first officer on the scene, is the one said as he made his way through the house, it appeared that everyone had been shot. That was his first take on that. There was no clear motive ever established, but we'll be back to that again when I go through the opening statement of Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Johnson said Guy claims he stayed at Barrington Park for several hours, 2 or 3 hours, whatever, that he was killing his family. John B. Johnson says Guy cannot account for his time between midnight and 6:30 or whatever time he was on the camera at this store or huddle house. We'll be back to that later. But there's a phone that they didn't even charge up nor see when the calls were made or whatever until just a few weeks before the trial. And there was a call at 3:25 and 3:28. So they were alive at that time. Somebody in that house was alive. They made a big deal about that phone being in the car Guy was driving, but the blood was on the inside of the phone and the phone calls. So they were alive at that time. Another thing on the documentary that John B. Johnson said, God gave me a gift. That gift was to be able to take a case to court and try it. One time in my life, I was going to be a Baptist preacher, but the war interfered with that. Now I consider myself to be directed by God to this line of work and basically do my preaching in front of a jury. Well, my thoughts on that, probably if he was going to distort God's word as much as he did this case, probably a good thing he wasn't a Baptist preacher, but that's just my opinion. And Parker testified. Mr. Johnson said that we was going to have evidence that guy said he was going to kill him. And Parker did testify. But he testified that guy said this in like July or August of 2009. But guy didn't even work there. His last day of working there was September in 2008. Mr. Johnson's remark to that, Parker, did he get it wrong? Well, he was a year off. So, you know.
Just a year.
Just a year.
Just a year.
I thought if you are doing a death penalty case, you need to have your ducks in a row. You need to be lined up. If I was on a jury, you would have to have ironclad evidence for me to be willing to send somebody to death. One of the things Darius said during his interview, which Darius was the lead investigator, was on the stand for quite some time, did have a lot to say. They asked him, did the police make mistakes? And he said, yeah, they could have made mistakes. But he knew if Guy didn't do this, he helped with it. Well, Matt Doran has been saying for 4 years, Guy did this by himself. He knew he did it by himself. And he still was convinced of that. So, they didn't wear Tyvek suits, all of them. Well, number one, when they got there, the first police officer on the scene, who were Stalvey, Oliver, Nohilly, and Rozier, who was a state trooper, were the first officers on the scene. They went through the house. Of course, they didn't have any boots. They didn't have any Tyvek suits or anything. They went through the complete trailer, so we don't know where they tracked mud or what they stepped on, what they didn't step on or nothing. And then you got EMS coming in to take out Michael and to take out Byron, so that's at least 4 more people that go through there. There's one on each end of the house. Michael's on one end and Byron's on the other end. So that's 4 more people that go in that house with and tracking evidence or contaminating or whatever. Common sense tells you that you cannot go through a crime scene without transferring stuff. They make a big deal about keeping evidence separated. Darius could not specifically state that certain things were done. He knew they were done because he trusted his people. You cannot say with a certainty something was done unless you were a witness to it or you know for a fact that it happened, and he didn't. And I'll get back probably to some of the rest of this stuff in a minute. But I wanted to go with Mr. Johnson's opening statement. Well, no, the judge first. Mr. Heinze is presumed innocent. This is Judge Scarlett to the jury once they've been selected. Mr. Heinze is presumed innocent until proven guilty. He enters the trial of this case with a presumption of innocence in his favor, and this presumption remains with him until it is overcome by the state with evidence sufficient to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty of the crimes charged. No person shall be convicted of any crime unless and until each element of the case is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden rests with the state to prove every material allegation of the indictment and every essential element of the crime or crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the accused beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. It is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. It is a doubt based upon common sense. We know a lot of people don't have that. And reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but a doubt for which a reason can be given arising from the consideration of the evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any combination of these. There is no burden of proof upon the defendant whatsoever, and the burden never shifts to the defendant to prove his innocence. If after considering all the facts and circumstances of this case your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law and you should acquit the defendant. But if no doubt exists in your minds as to the guilt of the accused, then you would be authorized to convict the defendant. If the state fails to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it would be your duty to acquit the defendant. And then he goes on about his duties as a trial judge. Okay, to me, this says you need to have a certainty in your mind, not a mathematical certainty, but you have to have reasonable consideration of the evidence. And keep in mind that these jurors during jury selection, every one of them said, even though they'd heard of the case, they would not make up their minds as to guilt until they heard all the evidence in the courtroom. And the judge told them they were not to concern themselves with the punishment. The jury has a very important role. It is your duty to determine the facts of the case and to apply the law to those facts. I will instruct you on the law that applies to this case, but you must determine the facts from the evidence. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the object of this trial is the discovery of the truth. You, the jury, must determine the credibility and believability of witnesses. It is for you to determine which witness or witnesses you will believe and which witness or witnesses you will not believe, if there are some you choose not to believe. It is important that you, as the finder of fact or the fact finder, it is your duty to believe the witnesses whom you think most believable. It is for you alone to determine the testimony you will believe and what testimony you will not believe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is important that you pay close attention to the evidence that is presented during this trial. It is important that you view the evidence with an open mind and at all times and reach no final conclusion until the trial is over. Do not jump to conclusions before all the evidence is presented. So he's telling them they choose who to believe. And I'm sure that is the way it is always, but these jurors seems to me like, instead of believing the evidence by the two expert witnesses, believe the innuendo of JBJ, John B. Johnson. But anyway, I will go back to this a little bit later with the comment. Okay, this is not the whole thing. It's too long to read. Lord help this. There's so much. I can't read all this, but anyway, I'm trying to hit the highlights, and it might sound a little disconnected to you, but if you listen closely, hopefully. I know sometimes I tend to get ahead of myself.
Keep going.
But Mr. JBJ says, this case, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to have to decide whether this defendant committed this crime by himself or in concert with another person. And this is after Matt Dorn has continually stated that he knows Guy Heinze did this by himself and that nobody else was involved. The evidence in this case will show you that he is a party to the crime of 8 murders, 1 aggravated assault. So if the chief of police is saying one person did it, how are you going to throw in that he's a party to the crime unless you're just wanting to throw that in there? And you have got this trial planned out from beginning to end, even unto the appeal, I believe. Party to the crime is someone who commits the crime or someone who aids and abets someone else in committing the crime. This evidence is, of course, circumstantial evidence, and by that I mean there's no videotape of the defendant committing this crime. There's no videotape of what happened in that trailer, and so we have to depend on the evidence in this case, which when you prove all the individual items, as we'll talk about, we'll show you in this case, you come to one conclusion as a jury, and that is you eliminate every other, and this is the key word, reasonable inference, except the fact that this defendant committed these crimes as a party or as a direct individual. Okay, and I'm skipping over a good bit of his description of how you go into the trailer park, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
About 8:18 in the morning, Margaret Orlinsky is up, and she sees defendant in this case drive up through a window to lot 147. About 8 o'clock, little after 8 o'clock, she does not see the defendant going in the house, but in a few minutes he comes out, and she hears him hollering that he needs help. A very short time after he drives up, he's hollering that his family has been beaten to death. He needs help. Someone call 911. Now, it's important that the evidence says that he hollered that his family was beaten to death because at that point in time, he is the only person who, in fact, knows what happened to this family. They were beaten to death. Well, back to the 911 tape, it clearly says it looks like they have been beaten to death. I don't know. That is also documented in the interview with the police, Lynn Davis, Mike Owens, and Ron Harrison.
Yeah.
You'll hear from the evidence in this case, when the police arrived, they went in the house and thought at this point they had been shot. That was their initial impression. The defendant is hollering that his family's been beaten to death. Okay. Skipping some more of his stuff down, and he says from about 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, nobody heard anything out of the ordinary, which I do remember somebody mentioning dogs barking, but they didn't really think nothing about it. They got up about 3, 4 o'clock to use the bathroom, which a lot of people do, especially older people, and heard dogs barking, but they went back to bed. Anyway, he's saying the defendant had no blood on his hands. They didn't check they were no visible blood on his hands, but they didn't check in any way to see. But there are ways to check for blood that is not visible to the naked eye, which they did not do. And one statement he says, he said he checked his father. Well, you'll be able to see how his father was laying and determine whether or not that in fact is true. How can you tell by the way a person is laying whether anybody checked to see if they had a pulse or maybe touch their chest to see if they're breathing? There's no way you can tell by looking at them where they're laying that you could tell that.
No.
He tells him he couldn't find a cell phone, so he runs to the neighbor's house to get him to call 911. They see him go in and out of the house 2 or 3 times. He never brings anything out. Constantly upset, has blood on him in a particular area we'll talk about in a minute, but nothing on his hands. Okay, police officers get there. They take him aside and talk to him, and he tells them, well, Michael is alive. I know Michael was alive. I could see him breathing. He tells them this, and this is important to the evidence in case. He says, I went in, and because he was too heavy to lift, I sat down on the bed with him, or lay down with him. Now, I think Guy said he sat down on the bed, But that is not the point I'm trying to make. None of these witnesses who were there with him will say he stayed in the house that long. The pictures of the crime scene plainly show that the head of that bed and the wall at the head of that bed where Michael and Russell Toller Sr. slept was bloody beyond. It was just saturated with blood. But the lower part of that bed did not have visible blood on it. Now, there probably was some on it, but it was not soaked like the head of the bed was. And he talks about no blood being on the shirt when they get there. And he talks about the gun in the car that guy said he put in the car because he thought it was hot. Excuse me. Of course, the keys are in the ignition of the car. Guy gave them permission to look in the car. He did not try to hide anything. And the gun's in there cocked and loaded and covered with blood, is John B. Johnson's statement. Well, the picture does not show that gun to be covered in blood.
No.
But the evidence will show you at that point that, in fact, there's a print belongs to the defendant on that gun in blood. Yet there was no blood on the defendant's hands. Now, Guy admitted to taking the gun out of the house, so his fingerprints would have had to have been on the gun. But the forensics did show some small specks of blood on that gun, but there was not a major amount of blood on that gun. And of course, this was not brought up anymore during the trial. And Stalvey, the picture, like I said, didn't show blood on the gun, but the lab crime scene at the GBI said there was blood on the gun, specks of blood, and that was Russell Toller's, which it was in the room where Russell Toller was killed. John B. Johnson said you had to step over Toller Sr.'s body to get to the gun in the closet. Well, if the gun was in the closet, it seems to me it wouldn't have had blood on it, but
yeah,
it did. So anyway, in the car that Guy was driving, which was Toller Jr.'s car, they made a big deal about all these witnesses saying that Toller Jr. would never let anybody drive that car. Yet there were other witnesses who testified that they had seen Toller Sr. driving it. They had seen Christie driving it. They had seen Guy Sr. driving it. But so that's the contradiction in that. The cell phone belonged to Michelle Toller, and he says it's covered with blood. But the blood in the testimony was on the inside of the phone. And it was found in the room where Michelle, Chrissy, Little Byron, and Joe West were. And of course, they made a big deal about Guy not being under arrest, but he was told he couldn't leave. Put him in the car. Could he get out of the car? No, he couldn't have gotten out of the police car, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they asked him, no Hilly, asked him about going to the station with him, which Guy agreed to go. No problem, no question. They get down to the station, and the police officers, of course, at that point, they realize I'm looking at someone who's got blood on them. Excuse me, another drink.
That's okay.
It's not what you think, it's tea. I'm looking at someone who's got blood on them, so maybe we better seize his pants because we don't know where the blood came from. We'll take his polo shirt. We don't know whether there's blood on that or not, but he doesn't. And he has on flip-flops. They take those because he said he wore them in the house. And then there was some testimony about him being barefooted. They leave his underwear on, give him some clothes. He goes down to the jail in this point at that time, and there's a big discussion over these shorts. These shorts, that clothes that he was wearing, was logged in to the county jail by Kevin Bullard. They were all put in a mesh bag, as he described it, that had a slot in the front where you could put the ticket. It shows what was in the bag, who it belonged to, the case number, and what the items were. All put in one bag. It was testified that these bags are not washed in between the inmates' belongings being placed in them. Well, at some point in time, some police officer gave Guy some gray shorts to put on, silver shorts. There's been quite a to-do over these gray and silver shorts. No Healy testified he didn't see blood on these to begin with. There's several people testified that they didn't see blood on Guy when he first arrived. Anyway, just to show you, all the clothes were logged in, and then they decide they need those clothes, and they go back and get them because they say there's black and silver shorts has blood on them. Well, John B. Johnson's making a big deal about them being underwear. Well, the khaki shorts was like a cotton fabric, and the black and silver shorts were like the athletic shorts made out of this flimsy, slidey stuff, polyester. I don't know. You see guys wearing them all over the place. A lot of them wear them for workout, but anyway, Guy had them on for undershorts, and they're saying that this blood was on there when they took the clothes. However, no Healy testified he didn't see blood on those clothes, but there's 3 people's blood in that little smear, and it seems to me like it could have been planted.
Yeah, this is what I think.
They went to the jail, logged in. If they didn't get put on from other items, I think it was planted. I actually think it was planted. Then he goes on to say that the police officers don't just stop there after getting the shorts and all this stuff. They find out from the defendant what he did that night, part of which would involve him going to a hotel where his brother was. Well, this was later in the morning and some other friends. And they go, at 5:30, they pull at Parker's, sometime between 5:30 and 5:45. They saw a guy wearing black reversible shorts, sandals, and a polo shirt. So we know that he was wearing these clothes at 5:30, and at 8:15 he had put other clothes on. I don't exactly know when that happened. I've never asked, but there's a big deal over these shorts. Officers note that there's some injuries, some old and some new. There's a cut on his leg and a fresh cut that's bleeding. And this was by Stalvey, who said he saw a fresh cut on his leg. Stalvey said this. But every testimony from Nohilly, Orlansky, Nixon, Jonathan, both the Jiffy stores, the Huddle House, they didn't see new blood anywhere. So Stalvey is the only one that said this. And then he's talking about the blood on the gun in the truck was Russell Toller's and the right palm print of the defendant on it. That was never testified in court about him having his right palm print on the gun. Never brought up again. Then there's a palm print on the headboard, which in the picture was perfectly obvious. You could see that palm print. However, That palm print did not have Guy's, it was not Guy's palm print. And the very interesting thing to me is when they sent it to the crime lab, they told them not to test it for anybody's fingerprints except Guy Heinze's. Now that seems just a little bit strange to most normal people, because in a crime scene, you would think if you had a palm print, you would want to know exactly who that belonged to.
Yeah.
If it was not Guy's, it could have been whoever did that, and probably was whoever did that. Anyway, he comes up with another piece of evidence. Police officers begin a search after the bodies were removed. They go through the mobile home. They find in the room where Michael Toller was, interesting piece of evidence. You're looking in that room, looking at a bed, and the right side there is a chest, a 2-drawer night table. The drawer's partially pulled out. You can see the pictures in this case of the blood spatters in that room and how it went all over the room, all over the wall, a second wall, headboard, another wall. But they find a piece of paper in that room. That piece of paper has no blood spatter on it. The evidence would show you that it was in the drawer. It has no blood spatter on it, but it does have a smear of blood on it, and that smear of blood comes back to Russell Toller Sr., and in that blood you will find the right little fingerprint and the right palm print of the defendant under circumstances where it could only have gotten there after this crime was committed. Okay, there's a big deal about this one piece of paper, and it's been testified to, documented in the transcript. Number one, the crime lab was told not to test any items that were going to be destroyed in testing. They tested this item. Of course, the defense had somebody there to see, but they tested this item. There was blood on it. Guy's fingerprint was on it. But where it came from, now John B. Johnson is saying it could only have gotten there after the crime was committed. It was in that drawer. Well, all the testimony, and he admits that the piece of paper was processed, whatever they did to it, whatever chemicals they used, however they did it, which Miss Fripp from the GBI went over exactly how they did it. They took photographs of the fingerprints, did their comparisons. It disintegrated. It's in pieces, but it's in evidence, still in pieces. But as I said, they were ordered not to test anything if it was going to destroy the evidence. And the testimony in this case showed the person who actually found this piece of paper never testified in court. Never. John B. Johnson was making a big deal about it being found in the drawer. Well, the person who found it was on the right side of the bed, facing the head of the bed and the nightstand. The other person that he got to testify was on the other side of the bed. Well, this person was honest enough to testify that he did not see where he picked it up from, which is interesting to me. The report was not written till later on. He didn't know where it came from. All he knows is the person who found it, which I believe was Garrett Hogue. I will say that in a minute. Picked it up and showed it to him, told him, look what he found, and he saw this piece of paper. But he never said where he found it. He didn't ask him where he found it. And it was never documented where it was found. No documentation whatsoever where this was found. Yet according to John B. Johnson, it was in that drawer. And it could only have gotten there after the crime However, to me, if a police officer is testifying that it was shown to him, he did not see where it came from, that should refute that evidence, but then it didn't. But anyway, another thing Mr. Johnson says, and he goes on, I'm skipping down, he goes on about the one adventure guy buying clothes and giving Tyler money and blah, 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 and going with Zach here, there, and yonder, who Zach is the guy he works with. Once back at the trailer, he's going to tell you he bought some crack from Joe. And of course, he tells police officers that he smoked crack with Joe West and marijuana with Joe West at the house. The interesting thing about that is Joe West has neither cocaine, marijuana in his system, nor Darcy. The evidence will show that the defendant has all three in his system, which the defendant admitted to having all three in this system, but never was it testified in the court, and nothing else was ever said about him saying he smoked crack with Joe West. It said he bought crack from Joe West, but he did not say he smoked crack with Joe West. So that's another fabrication of Mr. John B. Johnson. And then he goes into the haircut, which we know about that. And then we back to the car. He borrows a car from Russell Toller Jr. because he's supposed to go see a girl. Well, he was too high, so he didn't go see that girl. But anyway, as I said, he got people to testify. Toller Jr.'s half brother that he wouldn't let nobody drive that car. He wouldn't let him drive it. He didn't let nobody. Yet we had other people testify that they saw different people driving it. He'll tell you where he went to Barrington Park in McIntosh County, where he stayed and smoked crack cocaine. He gives no time frame. Just says he stayed there for a long time, and when he asked who else was there, he said nobody was there, not a soul. Not a single person was in that park, and that's interesting. Okay, then he goes on to, as you come into Barrington Park down the dirt road, how you turn off. But anyway, the gist of it is, and was actually testified, this part, the road goes circles around, park goes to the landing, which I don't know where that is. I've never been to Barrington Park, but the road kind of one road in and one road out. However, it circles around the park, sounds like, and there's a fork that goes off one way and then the other way goes to the landing. There were campsites out there. They testified to that. This guy that lives in the park, they had him to testify. But if I'm going to the park to smoke crack, I'm probably not going to be paying attention to anybody out there. He said he wanted to be by himself. He knew it was safe to go out there. People did it all the time. So apparently this was a hangout if you wanted to do your drugs and not be messed with. So anyway, the person that they were questioning said he went to bed around 10 or 10:30. So he is not going to know who was there, what was there, who went in and who went out after that time. And if he was even paying attention when he was there. If he's inside his camper, he's probably not going to see a lot that's going on outside. He said there was people out there, they had a campfire going, they were people partying. Well, these people were probably doing the same thing Guy was. They're not going to be paying attention to Guy. He's not going to be paying attention to them. But anyway, this is a big deal. Nobody saw him in Barrington Park. He's lied because there's people all over that park. And then he tells you that he didn't tell about an earlier trip to McIntosh County to the Fort King George Motel. We'll tell you that we have a witness will tell you that he and Tyler came to that motel, showed up. They were nervous, kept looking around, and that was kind of odd. Borrowed a pair of pliers to work on the car or something like that, and later left. Well, Tyler was not even there, didn't go to that motel. It was Toller Jr. and Guy went to that motel because Pee Wee, his Toller Jr.'s half brother, wanted them to go over there and take some pliers. His headlight or something had come loose and he needed some pliers. So Toller Jr. and Guy went over there, took the pliers. Pee Wee testified that they sat around, they talked a little bit. Guy didn't say much, but Toller Jr. kept walking around, looking out the window, acting like he was real nervous about something. They did get the pliers, they did work on the car, and apparently got the lights fixed or whatever. And then they smoked some marijuana, and Toller Jr. and Guy left. Then the next he tells you about going to the motel and knocking on the door where Tyler and his friends are. And they wouldn't let him in because they had snuck out of the house and they didn't want anybody to know that, so they wouldn't answer the door. So Guy goes to Parker's and calls them and tells them that it was him to let him in. So he goes back and one of the guys let him in. I got it written down somewhere, but I'm not there yet. Anyway, they let him in, and I'm still on John B.'s opening statement. This lasted for a long time.
Oh, I can't imagine.
And you got to understand that the defendant is still driving Toller Jr.'s car since midnight. And then he says he goes back to the trailer and starts yelling that his family's been beat to death. You'll hear evidence that this defendant was mad at his father for spending money in some sort that he disagreed with. He was mad at Russell, and he even threatened to kill the people in that trailer. There will be evidence of that in this case. Well, this is the evidence I mentioned where Parker, who said he was Guy's supervisor at Arrow Instant where they worked, and he did work with Guy at one time. However, he was mad. They thought Guy Sr., he had won a settlement for like $25,000, but everybody knew that he didn't have it. It was going to be appealed, and there's a long time between when an order is done and it is completed. Anyway, everybody knew Guy didn't have this money, but he is saying that Guy was mad with him, and we'll get to what he says later on. I'm still in the opening statement. And then he goes on, not one person in Glenn County, McIntosh County, Pierce County, Branton County, Charlton, Wayne, Camden, not one person's DNA was in that house. Not one person had any connection with that house that the police can find for that day except this defendant. He is the only person whose fingerprints, palm prints are found in blood in that room. Well, the testimony does not show that it was hidden in the drawer. It shows that nobody knows. It shows that the papers disintegrated when they were specifically told not to test something if it was going to destroy the paper. And the palm print on the headboard was never tested against anybody except Guy. So to me, that throws all that evidence out in the yard. No, null and void. All this evidence is going to come out, ladies and gentlemen, and lead you to the conclusion when you eliminate every other reasonable conclusion, reasonable inference, except that this defendant, in a period of time over 2 hours, 3 hours, beat members of his family to death with the barrel end of a shotgun. You'll be able to conclude that from the evidence in this case. To such an extent, the wounds were so hard that they injured parts of the neck, parts of the brain, and they were even down into the You would have to know the anatomy, but even on down into the neck, it just totally messed him up. And there's no way that you can claim these were gunshots. This whole thing was a drama thing. I mean, it's like you were in a movie almost. Okay, we get into Stalvey and No Hilly, and the question he's asking Stalvey what appeared to be unusual about Guy. He had some blood on his pants, on his shorts, and he had to refer back to his notes. He said on the right leg of his shorts and several older wounds on his hand. And whenever he moved while I was talking with him, I observed a fresh cut on his left leg just below the knee. Nobody else saw this cut. No Healy didn't see it. Nobody else testified to seeing this cut. You said there were fresh blood around it? Yes, was Stalvey's answer. Okay, this is still Stalvey. We were talking, he was still, all three of us stood together, No Healy, myself, and Mr. Guy Heinze Jr. He was saying everyone was dead, everyone was dead. He said this a couple of times. When I told him that someone else inside was still alive, and he immediately just stopped his ranting and turned his head quickly towards me, kind of like it was a surprise. Now, on the 911 call, Guy had specifically said, Michael is still alive, y'all need to hurry. So, this totally throws out that testimony as far as I'm concerned.
And you can hear that on that call.
I told him, and the question was, did he ask who that was? It came up in the conversation. I told him it was the child that was in the back bedroom to the left side of the mobile home that I originally went to. Now, we know this testimony is totally false from the 911 call. We didn't have to be back there. We heard that. And he mentions him saying he sat on the bed, which I already said. And if you watch the documentary, you could see the pillows, the head of the bed was absolutely horrendously soaked, but the lower part of the bed did not have that much blood on it. I didn't see any, but there could have been. I would definitely not say there wasn't any. Then they go on about the gun being in the car. Was it cocked and loaded? Was it just like you see it now? And it was cocked and loaded in the car, but it wasn't in there when in the courtroom when they were looking at it. But we already been over the blood on the gun and the fingerprints. Of course, Guy's fingerprints was on it. And No Healy, when they were saying there was Stalvey, Stephanie Oliver, and Trooper Rozier was there when No Healy got there. And then they talked about entering the mobile home, which way they went, and the location of the victims and so on. And then No Healy is testifying when he asked Guy to tell him what he was doing the previous evening, and Guy told him he'd gotten off work around 4:30. They'd gone home, smoked marijuana with Joe West when he walked in the house. Then he left in his cousin Russell Jr.'s car. And he told him he got some crack from Joe West. He told him he smoked some marijuana before they got there, smoked some crack. Anyway, during this little charade, and the first DA that was on this case was not John B. Johnson, it was Stephen Kelly. However, once they got rid of Amanda Williams, who was Guy's judge on this case, Stephen Kelly got appointed to be the judge. But Stephen Kelly, during this little charade about the ankle monitor and letting him out on bond, when I asked him, I had known Stephen Kelly for quite some time, worked with his wife, who I think he kept questioning me, asking me how long I was going to be there. His wife wanted to see me, blah, 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 which tends to make me believe that they were trying to get evidence or see what I thought about this case. But anyway, Mr. Stephen Kelly's words to me were, I asked him, did they think Guy was guilty? His words were, they gave him a really, really hard time. But Guy did everything he could to make him angry, except that was not the exact words he used. But the meaning was the same, a little more graphic. So, I don't know if you've ever listened to police officers talk, but working in the ER, I have had no few of them tell me not to worry. They could find me. I drive the car in their county. They could get me anytime. And it seems to be a proven fact. Once you aggravate these people, they're going to be on to you forever after. That is just my opinion. But anyway, after Stephen Kelly got to be judged, then I think Jackie Johnson became the DA. I'm not sure if she became the DA right at that moment. I know she was not, but shortly after she was the DA. And she has been elected DA ever since. But we can see from the corruption that's going on in that county now and the things that have happened since then with the Caroline Small case. Now, that was Matt Doran covering that up, and Sasser and Simpson were the two killers. Jackie Johnson was on that case. She handled that together with Matt Doran. And then with the Sasser case, she handled that illegally. And then when you get to the Arbery case, she did the same. And the McMichaels, who she refused to arrest, and then got Barnhill, who said there was no cause to arrest him. Gregory McMichael was the investigator in court on Guy's case. Jackie Johnson and John B. Johnson was on Guy's case. I was told the reason that John B. Johnson was on this case with Jackie Johnson is because he was an experienced DA and she wasn't for a case of this magnitude. So all these people are threaded throughout all these cases. And asking Nohilly, did you notice anything about the appearance of his clothing, whether or not they might be anything as far as blood? The only thing that stood out to me, answer from Nohilly, is the khaki shorts he was wearing. Right side appeared to be a smear of blood on the khaki shorts. Did you see any blood anywhere else? No. Did you see blood on his hand? No. Blood on his shirt? No. Okay. This is Nohilly testifying again about Guy's appearance. He seemed distant, really. I didn't know that he really was intoxicated until he told me. And I thought you just told me there were other signs of intoxication. I didn't start looking for them until he said it. Now, I don't know if you worked in emergency medicine or anything that would make you... I'm sure most everybody's been around drunks. Most everybody's got a drunk in their family. Unfortunately, I've had several. You can tell they're intoxicated from their first words out of their mouth, or I've been able to. You can tell by the way they act, they're intoxicated. This was him questioning him about the guy's appearance. But he didn't know he was intoxicated until he mentioned it. Okay, and then he's trying to say, this is Newell. When you're intoxicated, your sense of timing is not exactly on spot. And if it's something, whether you're intoxicated or not, if it's days before, the day before, or even tonight, I maybe not be able to tell you exactly what I did step by step today, and I think most people are probably like that. But they seem to make a big deal out of some of the things that Guy got out of order. But anyway, No Healy took Guy to the station. Guy volunteered to go and turned him over to Mike Owens. And then the lead sheets. There's a big deal about these lead sheets, went on and on and on and on. Lead sheets, I think probably most everybody knows, when people call in tips, you have to write down who called if they give you the name, what they say, what time they call, what day they call, blah, 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 blah. And whichever officer takes that lead sheet needs to, or is assigned that lead sheet, needs to go talk to that person. They need to document what that person said. They need to fill in the notes so the next person that comes along and looks at that lead sheet knows what happened, knows if they went and investigated, knows what they said, knows if they need follow-up with further investigation, or if it's a dud, or blah, blah, blah. Well, these lead sheets, strangely, were not completed. There was no way to tell everything that went on, but the primary lead sheet that we're discussing now was one that Dwayne Hudson, Calvin Hudson, gave the name of Dwayne, made the threat to the Toller family, the threat to Russie Toller Sr. about killing his whole family. He made a comment referring to Dwayne and another subject, making the threat simultaneously. Well, this Andy Anderson, it seems they just looked up priors. They didn't look for him, but the person that told them about this Andy Anderson was part of it, and this Dwayne. They didn't know Dwayne's last name. The Anderson they were looking for, they claim, was in the Wayne County Jail. But they found this out from priors, but they didn't ever go talk to him. They didn't ever go show him a picture to see if the person that he was saying, he was the person that was in question. They never went and checked. The tape that was made of that conversation was lost. The threat that was made was, what goes around comes around. This is from No Healy. We'll kill your whole family. And that information, you conducted this interview during jury selection 3 weeks ago when you were sent out by investigator Darris. And his answer was, I'm not sure where the case was as far as jury selection, but it was on October the 1st of this year. Jury selection started September the 15th. They took the information to identify Andy Anderson, but nobody has ever spoken to Andy Anderson. Calvin Hudson was referring to Andy Anderson and to Dwayne. The information I got from Calvin Hudson, well, did you take that off the computer, the picture back to Mr. Hudson and ask him? Well, no. And the lead sheets and all this question, and he asked who signed it off. Apparently they think several people talked to these people on the lead sheets, yet nobody documented anything. Nobody followed up on anything. So none of that actually, had they investigated that, and this is definitely people who, had they investigated, they determined that this Dwayne lived in the trailer park where the Tollers lived, just 5 trailers down. It seems like they should have investigated most everybody in that trailer park. Yet there were some Hoyts in that trailer park that were known acquaintances of the Tollers, were known drug people, were known to party and do drugs, were known to be associated with Brenda Falligan, who was living in that trailer and was Toller Sr.'s sister. They didn't investigate any of this. But then comes up the nunchucks.
Mm-hmm.
Gail Montgomery, well, first off, the maintenance man found them. They called Gail Montgomery. She came down and she called the police. Well, Mr. Johnson called her a liar on the stand about these nunchucks. She never called them in. These were found like 14 days after the crime was committed. Yet these nunchucks have never been found since. And she testified that she found the nunchucks. They appeared to have blood on them. And when I looked in the bottom, I pulled paper out. Lead sinkers fell out of me. And she said, this is something you all would want. And supposedly they did. But they denied anybody knowing anything about it. However, it just so happened that this happened on the same day that the guy was killed on St. Simon's Island over the sign in his yard, which was covered up also by Matt Doran. So they had the exact date. So they went through the phone calls and come to find out Mike Owens is the one who took that call. Well, Mike Owens just could not remember if he sent anybody out to get these nunchucks. He knows he didn't go. He didn't remember taking the call, but it was his voice on the call. He did admit that. Kind of hard to dispute when you're listening to yourself. But anyway, Mr. John B. Johnson accused her of making all this up. Well, come to find out, it was documented that she was telling the truth. So that's saying to me that was a shoddy investigation. Matter of fact, the lead sheets, the non-documentation, the non-follow-up, the nunchucks, the VHS tape from the park that got lost but then got found later. All this stuff says to me, if I was a jury, that this was a really shoddy job by the police department. Would I really want to send somebody to their death with this evidence? No, I wouldn't. But statistics say that if it is a death penalty case, people are a lot more likely to convict. And in this case, a mass murder case, which had never happened there before, not even in the state of Georgia, except 100 years before, some guy killed his family with an axe. But it was not in a single wide trailer. And I don't think it was all the same night. However, no crime of this magnitude before, no adequate investigation. And in one of Jackie Johnson's, one of the many appeals that were written up by different attorneys, one of Jackie Johnson's responses to that, even if they had the nunchucks, they wouldn't be any good because blood tends to disintegrate in heat and humidity. And being in South Georgia, being out 2 weeks outside, and this was testified by the biologist from the GBI lab, that blood would disintegrate. So this makes me wonder if this was set from the beginning. If we hide those nunchucks and we keep those nunchucks, the DNA is going to be gone. There's no way that they can find that DNA. So they cannot prove that these were the murder weapons. So we still have Guy Heinze, and we still can keep Guy Heinze in jail. So that is my opinion. No scientific explanation. And I already told you, No Healy said he didn't find any place on Guy that was bleeding. Somebody did testify that he had several old cuts. Well, if you're doing construction work, which Guy was, you're going to have nicks and scrapes, and I even do, and I don't do it for a living. I just do stuff periodically. And at one point in time, when Guy was in North Carolina, he did do so well as to shoot a nail through his hand. Anyway, things happen when you're doing construction work, and that is all old wounds, healed wounds, and lost my train of thought there for a minute. There was something important I needed to say, but I forgot what that was. Anyway, there was no new wounds on Guy. Oh, I know what it was. I was going to count up the licks from the autopsies, but I didn't get around to doing that. But Donahue testified some were 48, some were 42, some was 35. Multiple injuries to each victim. 8 of them, 9 counting Byron. Byron was beaten so bad that he had to learn, 3 years old, he was like a vegetable. He had to learn to do everything all over. He had to learn to be potty trained. He had to learn to eat. He had to learn just like he was a newborn after he overcome this. And Alvagine, Rusty Toller Sr.'s brother, and I think the prosecution was using her to try to get information from me and trying to find out what I was doing, because she kept asking me about a legal defense fund. She kept asking me questions about Guy. And she told me one day, well, Byron is going to be able to testify. I didn't know anything about his condition at the time. And she told me, well, Byron's going to be able to testify. And I thought, well, that is a blessing. Good, bring it on. But lo and behold, poor Byron could not testify. That would have saved a lot of this. But I'm thoroughly convinced. And two, they wouldn't let me see Guy for a couple of days. Yet the day it happened, they let Alvagine see Guy. And I think they used her to try to get information out of me. But God did not give me looks, he did not give me money, but he did give me 2 brain cells with a little common sense. And I'm fairly good at picking up on some things. And everything I see in this leads me to believe it was a setup from the very beginning, even to serve them through appeal. There was somebody in that trailer park saw a vehicle go up there during the night, but that was never checked out. Did you take steps to follow up with that lead and obtain any other possible answers? No. Who did you report that to, Investigator Darris? When did this occur? This report was written on September the 9th, 2009, a little bit more than a week after this crime occurred. But it was not followed up on. To me, the sensible thing at a crime scene, you would investigate all blood, all tracks, anything, any lead. I thought that was procedure that you had to investigate all leads. And Darius's remark on the witness stand was we could not send, when he was questioned about why they did not send the bloody stuff from the bathroom that nobody was in, we had to choose what was important. We could not send the whole trailer. We had to pick what was important about this crime scene. Well, in a crime scene, any blood should be important, particularly where people were beaten to death with a blunt object. That blood would be important. There was some documentation of blood being on the faucet in one of the bathrooms. That was not checked either. The drains were not checked either. But they stored evidence in both bathtubs in the house. They did not keep a clean area. They did not check out an area and move stuff and have a clean area. It got to be so much evidence that they collected, they had to put it in an empty trailer that was next to this trailer. So all of this, everything was contaminated. You don't know what, come from where, from when, from how. Got to flip the pages, folks. And as I said, no, Healy didn't see blood on Guy's shorts when he took him to the police station, those undershorts. There was a big to-do about those shorts. Another thing that happened, whenever you collect evidence, you're supposed to put what it is initially, time it. You're supposed to mark it where you can know, seal the bag so you'll know that it's not been tampered with. And this, when it got to the crime lab, one of the ladies, Miss Fripp, I believe, testified, and I believe this was this paper that disintegrated. It went to the crime lab. The person at the crime lab sealed it and put their initials. When it came from the Glenn County Police Department, there was no seal on it, no initials, none of that. So Darius testified he didn't know. He felt like it was done because that is their procedure and he trusted his people. However, Ms. Fripp says when it got to the crime lab, it was not done. They did it when it arrived there so they could know each person that went through. Apparently when something goes to the crime lab, it goes into this vault, to that vault, to that vault, to this person brings it to them. One person does not see it all the way through, but it has to be sealed with people's initials on it until it gets to the person who's doing the actual testing. Well, this was not done. So that was an issue, but I kind of glossed over that too. That was unimportant, just like so much of this stuff was. They had him arrested for marijuana. The Darv said in the car. Another drink. And cocaine. Well, he had cocaine in his system. He admitted to smoking crack. He admitted to taking the Darvocet. He admitted to smoking marijuana. But do you know when this was at their initial charges? This test was conducted and testified by the crime lab. This was tested on 9/18/2013. This crime occurred August the 29th in 2009, or the 28th, between the 28th and 29th. It could have been part of both. Who knows? Anyway, one of the questions she was asked, do you have any other identification of another drug making an identification before you on these items? No, not that I'm aware of, sir. I found that interesting too. And the marijuana and the pills was the same difference. So and as I said, evidence not sealed. Believe it or not, people, we kind of getting to the end of this. I know you're tired of hearing me.
No, you're doing brilliant.
There were, it was evident from the people going in, which I understand the EMS had no choice. People are alive. You send them in to get the people out and do the best you can for them, which Byron survived, but they only got Michael to Savannah. He was both of them were life flighted, but Michael died the next day. So I understand those people cross-contaminated. And I can even understand the first officers going in to make sure nobody else is there. But all these others, I don't understand. And then one testified off this Miss Oliver swabbing the paper. Couldn't remember for sure. She didn't document exactly which areas she swabbed, but she swabbed several different areas. Don't know if she used one swab or others. But anyway, and I already told you about the phone call that somebody in that trailer was alive, and I suspect probably trying to get help at 3:45 and 3:48 that morning on that phone. However, that phone was never even looked at to just a few months before the trial. This was four years in the making. Another interesting thing, and there was a picture in the paper of Matt Doran, September the 4th, shortly after the murders took place. Matt Doran was standing in front of a computer screen that had fingerprints on it, and he's got a fingerprint card in his hand. And the thing says he was matching prints that was found at the crime scene to the prints of the victims. And none of that information was ever provided to the defense. Chief Doran was a fingerprint expert. He had been in trials, qualified as a fingerprint expert before he ever became chief. He conducted fingerprint analysis, but none of that ever showed up in the evidence or in court. That was a Brady violation also. And as I said, this whole thing makes me think that this was a setup to go from beginning until and through appeal. Another thing that was testified to is the Glenn County Police detectives went to Zach Majazics, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, and got Guy's boots from them. And they asked Zach if he helped Guy kill his family. I didn't remember that, but I did see in the transcript. The girl at Parker's on St. Simon's says she didn't see blood on Guy, and he acted normal. Jonathan Carmichael, that was in the motel room and let Guy in and went on back to bed and was the one that answered the phone when Guy called, testified that Guy was wearing the polo shirt and the khakis, and he didn't see any blood on his clothes, and Guy's behavior was normal. And Pee Wee, which James Davis is Toller Jr.'s half-brother, but his nickname was Pee Wee. Everybody had a nickname. I've had so many I can't keep up with them. and especially from the ER. I've had some. I actually learned some new words. Anyway, he is the one that testified that Russell was the one acting real fidgety. This being Russell Jr., walking around in the motel, turning around, looking out the window, and he said somewhere around 7 to 9 o'clock. He's not sure which. And they asked him if he had ever seen Guy be violent, and he said no. Sean Stroll is the one that testified he took photos of the crime scene while Garrett Hogue and Craig Cupp did a walkthrough video. Some of the officers were wearing Tyvek suits, others didn't. Some had on shoe covers, and some had on nothing. Evidence that was deemed to have evidentiary value was bagged in a brown paper bag, taken outside, handed to somebody else, logged, documented, and sealed. Yet we know for a fact from the crime lab's testimony, one of these bags had no seal on it and no documentation. Leon Tucker and Garrett Hogue and Craig Cupp decided what was of evidentiary value. And Darius's theory, which in my opinion Newell should have objected to, Darius's opinion was Guy went back to that house. He wanted that Darvocet. There was Darvocet in the car, but Guy went back to that house to get Darvocet. And Russell Toller caught him. He beat him to death. He had to kill the rest of them to keep from being found out. Well, there were pills found in the bedroom where Joseph West was. There was 2 in the kitchen next to Toller Jr. And there was a bag on the kitchen counter. So, if he was going back for the Darvocet, why didn't he just take them and go on about his business? That makes no sense. I saw that there were some Dickie pants found in front of the couch and some white pants found close to Guy Sr., but nothing else was ever mentioned about them. But this car that Guy was driving, and Knox, I believe, either Knox or LaForte one that works for Knox and Associates, testified that it would take some time for anybody to scrub that amount of blood off that would have to have been on the perpetrators. They testified that it had to be probably around 5 perpetrators to do this crime. But anyway, if Guy had been a party to this and was driving that car, number one, he wouldn't have been able to get all the blood off of him from 348 to 5 something, whatever he was seen on St. Simon's. And who knows how many of them were dead when the phone call was trying to be made, but we do know somebody was alive then. But there should have still been blood in that car, and there should have been some kind of blood on Guy's hands, but there was no test ever done to notice if there was any hidden blood on Guy's hands. They did luminol the car, and no blood was found in that car. So that was kind of interesting. Jason Ogden, who was at the Huddle House, didn't say Guy appeared to be on any drugs. He did say he did see blood. Didn't see blood, excuse me. And Thomas Williams was the one that lived at the Barrington Park and testified about the roads going off around out there, but he also testified he went to bed around 10:30 p.m. So he admitted that he wouldn't have known what happened after that period of time because he went to bed. and Orlinsky, who lived next door to the toller trailer and who is the one who called 911 for Guy initially, said he was running, wringing his hands and saying, "Help, help, help, my whole family is dead and it looks like they've been beaten to death. Got to call the police." And Guy was in front of Nixon's truck, who lived next door to Orlinsky, dry heaving. But neither one of them saw blood on Guy. He acted like he was in shock, which I'm quite sure he was. I cannot imagine what it would be to go in and find these many people dead in this condition. I cannot imagine. Testimony was made that Guy played with little Byron more than anybody else in that trailer. Guy and Michael got along real well. He took up time with Michael. Nixon said he saw Guy go back into the trailer. And he also said he had seen Rusty Sr. and Chrissy drive that car that Junior wouldn't let nobody drive. And I don't remember who said they saw Guy driving it, but somebody did. Clint Rowe, who was Diane's brother-in-law, who was the ex-wife of Rusty Toller Sr., is the one testified that Guy Sr., Jr., and Rusty Jr., Jr. being Guy Jr., and Rusty Jr. planned to move into a trailer at Sunset Trailer Park, and they had been working on this trailer at night prior to this incident, trying to get it ready for them to move into. And Gloria Jemerson, which was Byron's grandmother, was the one that said Byron was on a respirator for about a month, had to go to rehab in Atlanta and learn everything again. Clifford Engle's name was in there somewhere, but there was no documentation about why his name was there. Was this a lead sheet that was not followed up on? We don't know. Knox and Associates, which Michael Knox and Michael LaForte testified, went through their findings of all the crime scene photos and things that were sent to them. They were very graphic. They were shown in the courtroom. They went through each one piece by piece and explained all. They testified that they would have been at least 5 perpetrators, more than likely. Arden testified, he was an expert witness out of D.C., testified that there had to be more than one perpetrator. Yet the jury disregarded all of this evidence that was actual factual evidence and listened to John B. Johnson's hullabaloo. And to quote Mark Twain, no amount of evidence will ever persuade an idiot. And all you need, it seems to me like, is a drama queen prosecutor who has a remote at best acquaintance with the truth to convict somebody. How this jury sleeps at night, I do not know. How John B. Johnson and Jackie Johnson can sleep at night, I do not know. Other than I know they cannot possibly have a conscience. That God is apparently not trying to remind them that they're doing things wrong, because God will convict your conscience. So evidently, they must not belong to Him. I don't know. That is not, God did not lead me to judge. And let me just throw this in here. I don't know how many of y'all saw that. But as I said, God didn't give me money. He didn't give me looks. But he did give me a little bit of common sense. But God bless Tyler, whose back is causing him great trauma. Great trauma. Because he is carrying all the looks, the brains, and the humor in this family. That's all I got to say.
Oh dear. Tyler's going to try and call in a minute.
Oh, I bet he will.
Oh,
He gonna have something to say. Now he's got brains now. His
waiting.
Their mama was smart, and she had common sense. Everybody in the family has common sense except Tyler. It missed him some kind of way. I don't know. It just went completely over his head. I'm sure he'll be calling him. But like Mama was saying about guy, in front of the truck dry heaving and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's graphic. He's never gonna forget that. That's always gonna be in his head.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, this kid, that's like Eric. We killed a deer one year, and we went to skinning that deer. And this youngin' went to puking all over the place. He cannot deal with blood, with guts, and he can't deal with it. It's like me with a maggot. I'm gonna dry heave.
Maggot.
I'm gonna upchuck. I can deal with anything but a maggot.
Oh yeah.
But guys, he's always been sensitive. Really, if I didn't know my sister gave birth to him, he really probably don't even belong, because he's the least confrontational. He's the more laid back. He's not gonna argue. Rest of us, we argue with a brick wall if he talk back to us.
Yeah.
But he's just not a confrontational person. He never has been. Even when he was little. And Tyler used to do stuff to get him in trouble all the time. Guys had so many daggone butt whoopings because of Tyler. Because Tyler was sneaky. He would do stuff and then God would get the blame for it.
Oh.
So Tyler's not innocent, which he admits to it, that, he'd do stuff to get Guy in trouble. But, Guy's just very sensitive, and he was always with me and Mama, because Linda Gill was going to nursing school. And we'd go to the beach and walk Disney World. And there was one time we went to Six Flags up in Atlanta. It was me and him and Mama. We in that old 89 Bronco she had. It was new then. Anybody knows Mama's, I mean, even when she ties stuff down with her tie ropes, she's got to wash it in the washing machine before she sticks it back in the truck, because that dirty rope's not going back in her clean truck. So little guy, he's a little bitty turkey, he's in his car seat. Well, we stopped by D's to get some sausage biscuits. And of course, I eat mine. I ain't got no Miss Milk Collie. He's back there, and I'm not paying no mind. I'm sitting up front. We get to Six Flags, and he's like, and Mama asked him, did you eat your sausage? Yeah, Grandma. Yeah. There wasn't no way he could eat two of them daggone biscuits. He done shoved the sausage. He didn't like the sausage. He ate the bread, the biscuit, but he didn't like the sausage. He stuffed them sausage patties.
I've heard this.
Stuffed them in the daggone seat back there. And thought he was going to be sleeping. I mean, he shoved them way down there. Mom got no, she's like, there ain't no way he ate them. She goes sneaking through there, find sausages. Well, guess who got their butt tore up in the parking lot in Six Flags in the middle of God and everybody? God. So he flat sore shoved them down there.
Oh dear.
He didn't want to eat broccoli, so he feed it to the dog.
The broccoli, yeah.
And there was one time the little feller was running through the house and he busted his lip and had to go have stitches. Well, it was time to take him out. He ain't want to mess with him. So mama is, because my mother has common sense, unlike my poor little nephew Tyler Scott. She's like, we'll put his hands down by his side, we'll wrap him up in a sheet. So we wrapped him up in the sheet like a mummy. The only thing sticking out is his head. And he's ringing and trying to ring and twist, and they done got him. I mean, he's like a mummy. He can't move. We done got him out on the kitchen table like a pig for slaughter, laid out there. Mama goes convincing to pulling the stitches out of his top lip, and he's a pitching a fit and carrying on. But it didn't take her just a couple of seconds when she had him out. Then he was fine. We unwrapped him. He was good to go. I mean, we taught him how to ride the bicycle. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He's just laid back. He's a sweetheart. He's still a sweetheart. He's always going to be my little baby, even though he's grown.
But, just get along with everybody.
He does. He always has. He's like, he gets that for me. I get along with everybody. I'm not an a-hole to you until you be an a-hole to me, and then I'm going to be a bigger a-hole.
I'm going to keep being nice.
He's just going to walk away.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be confrontational. He's not going to argue. He's not nothing. That's what I'm telling you. If I didn't know Linda Gale gave birth to him, he does not belong in this family because he don't have the attitude like the rest of us do. And I mean, he ain't gonna hurt anybody. And I mean, like with, he's good with kids and stuff. Like playing with Byron and all. And I can see him being the one that played with him more.
Yeah.
And like with Michael having Down syndrome. I got another nephew that had Down syndrome. So, Guy and Tyler grew up with a cousin, with Down syndrome. Jason, he couldn't talk or nothing. But he could, he'd grunt and point, and you'd give him 2-liter bottles and some straws and some tape, and he was happy-go-lucky. He'd make all kind of contraptions out of them 2-liter bottles and straws and stuff. It was just amazing some of the stuff he'd come up with. So, but yeah, Guy, he's tender-hearted fella. But I mean, I could see him having a bond with Michael like that because growing up with Jason, and him having the same thing. Jason couldn't talk, or he couldn't do a whole lot. But he and then there was one time we was at my brother's. Well, actually, me and Eric, he had an old brown Chevy. It was a dark brown. And we was off somewhere, and we were supposed to be home before Mama got home from the hospital. We out in the middle of BFE, somewhere out in Kingdom County. And he's hollering, we got to go. We got to get back before Mama gets home. I'm like, me and Guy's kids, man. Because, I mean, there's only 8 years difference between me and Guy.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here holding little Guy. He's in his underwears, no shirt. We barefooted. We's on country kids. We ain't like clothes. And I remember him saying, we got to get back before Mama gets home. I'm like, well, you driving? I wasn't even old enough to have a driver's license yet. And I'm sitting here, and we coming through the back roads, and he's hitting these back roads to the woods, and we hitting these big old boulder holes, son, and that Chevy's just popping up in there. I'm holding on to the little guy to keep him from popping around in the cab like popcorn. I'm like, we made it home, though, before Mama got home. So I don't know, she probably knew we was gone. We got back in time.
Excellent.
Yeah. We got back in time, but I'm sitting here thinking, how are we going to get in trouble? We're children. You're the one watching us. And that's just me and him having to grow up on TV dinners. Linda Gale did not like to cook. Except for Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, they throw down.
Yeah.
But I would have to stay with Guy and little Guy when Mama and Linda Gale both of them working at the hospital and, working night shift. So I'd stay with them. Big Guy would be watching us. And he'd come in there, he's like, which one of these daggone kid cuisines y'all want? He's like, your sister, she too lazy, she ain't gonna cook. You should get us the kid cuisine to get him the hungry man. And that's pretty much what we lived off of for a long time. Unless, we was home with Mama because she cooked.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah. I'm telling you, we ate a whole lot of kid cuisines, man. So we was grateful when Mama cooked real food. And then there was a time too, this whole joker. my brother's wife at the time, or girlfriend, they should have been married. They've been together for over 20-something years before she died. She had made some deviled eggs. Now, Teresa always cooked too. And she cooked, full course meals. So, of course, we like to be over there because, we ate real food. And I remember him going in the kitchen one time. He come back out in the living room and he's rubbing his little belly. He was a teenager then. He's like, oh, he said, Aunt Billie, Uncle Eric. He told her, bring the home. I'm like, what the world's wrong with this kid? He's like, I don't feel so good. So Teresa gets in there and goes and looks. That kid done swallowed 20 deviled eggs. I said, no daggone wonder you don't feel good, son. Who was the troll? We got a troll. Where's the troll?
Oh, they've gone. I've blocked them.
I've seen that.
Yeah, no, they've gone. I've blocked them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've just signed on for the video visit with Guy, and
I can see where the name of that. Never mind. That's somebody with that name I don't even want to talk to anyways.
No. Guy said he loves you. I just told him that was because I just signed on for the video visit. Yeah, I've just signed on for it and said you're telling stories about him. He said he loves you.
Yeah, little turkey. I love him too.
Little turkey.
Yep, that's my little. Well, he ain't no little turkey no more. He's a grown turkey now. But yeah, has anybody got any questions or anything?
There's none been posted.
Somebody? I don't see any.
No, nobody's posted any.
But that's all right.
No, I think that's it then.
I reckon so.
Cool guy, little turkey for real.
Right? Yeah, I gotta wash this trailer out. Some of us gotta work on Sundays.
Right, well,
he did.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, go on, Jean.
Is there any time left? It's been a while. I was just going to mention that when he was less than 2 years old, he arrested. He had a seizure and arrested. And that was kind of a rough time. So I think he is still here for a reason. I think that this all happened for a reason. God was not surprised. I think this all happened for a reason, but I do and have always thought that he would get out of prison. I didn't realize it would take this long, but normally this is the process. But anyway, I honestly believe he will eventually get out, but I think the devil's been trying to kill him for years.
He's been trying, because I will never forget that, man. I remember Guy Senior Lindgale picked us up. Mama had worked that night at the hospital and was home. Actually, she was home taking a shower. And I don't remember where we went. But I was in the back seat with Guy, and I looked Junior, and I looked over, and his daggone eyes had rolled back in the back of his. There was no color. And it freaked me out, and I went screaming at my sister, something's wrong with Guy. His eyes is rolling back in her head. Of course, she's a nurse, and she's an RN, but she does not do trauma. I'm a child, so I got a reason to freak out then. Now I'm more calm about it. But when his eyes rolled back and I didn't see no color, that kid took 10 years off my life. I'm going to die 10 years short because of that. And I remember Big Guy, he drove up, dang near almost through the emergency room doors at the Bronzeville Hospital. And I remember her snatching him out of that car seat so fast, and she went to running in there screaming. And God bless Aunt Dream, one of Mama's friends. They worked together, her and Doris and Miss Winnell. And I always called them my aunts. They all worked together for years and years. And she went in there, and it's a good thing Aunt Dream could catch, because she just threw little Guy at her. And it's a good thing she could catch. But yeah, that kid, he's been through some stuff.
Yeah.
Like Mama said, everything happens for a reason. We might not understand it, not know why, but he shouldn't be sitting in there.
No.
And I mean, he's coped better with it than the rest of us would.
He's
I'd
very
already
strong.
been stark crazy.
Yeah.
This time, it's been 11 years, man.
Yeah.
11 years of sitting in somewhere in a cage for something you didn't do. And I mean, common sense would tell you it had to be more than one person. And God just ain't, he can't even stand to watch you skin a deer. He daggone sure can't do something like that. I mean, it takes somebody with some balls and gumption to go in and do what they done to them.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be, you can't have no conscience. You can't have there's just no way. But they should have took all that evidence in. I mean, they do it all the time when crimes are committed. They take the whole trailer in, or they, bag the whole house.
They left so much behind.
Yeah, they did, and skipped over. But the thing is, and I'm thinking that, in my opinion, a lot of ways thinking is their mama's dead. His mama's dead. His daddy, of course, is dead. So he don't have nobody. They didn't think about mama coming in, and me and Tyler.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been a long struggle, and I know it's been a struggle for God. And they moved him from prison to prison, and here and there, and it's just irritating.
Yeah. We're going to keep on fighting. That's the idea for the podcast, is to get his name out there to more people. And then, if anyone knows anything, then, now's the time to say something, even if it's the smallest thing. Now's the time to talk. But we need to get his name out there.
I think Kimmy's saying that something about she can't share the link.
I think Brianna was trying to share the link for the group, for Guy's Voice. So, yeah, if you're not already a member of the Guy's Voice Facebook group, then please, please, please search for it and come and join us. You'll find out all the information about Guy's case on there. This is episode 2 of the podcast. Episode 1, I just did a brief sort of introduction to Guy's story. Didn't go into too much detail, but just sort of went from beginning to end so people would know what it was about. But yeah, it's really important to join. Yeah, exactly. That's the idea. As the episodes follow on, is to really break down the case as much as possible. So, and your mum's done absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, Jean, for coming on and sharing all of that with us. That's been absolutely amazing. And Billie as well, thank you for sharing some stories about a little turkey.
Yeah, now you can tell on me, because I throwed him under the bus more than once.
Yep, I've got Guy on like the other headphones, and he's asked me to say to everyone, please, please, please sign the petition. You can find it in the Guy's Voice group. So please, please, please sign the petition. He said to say thank you to Eugene and you, Billie, for coming on and being part of the Guy's Voice podcast. And thank you to everybody that's listened as well. So he's asked me to pass that message on. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you to Eugene. I will.
And if he don't call me, I'm going to reach to the phone and slap him.
I will tell him he's got to call you. He's got to. If this thing ever works, because at the moment it's just thrown me off. It's a good old system that doesn't work at all.
It's back on. The daggone internet's crazy.
This video visit JPEG thing. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So yeah. So thank you everybody. Thank you everybody for listening. And yeah, next Sunday will be episode 3, where we're joined by Daniel Alden from Eye on Innocence. And we will be breaking down the trial, as giving you a lot of detail about what happened at the trial. I mean, Jean's covered quite a lot from the trial today. So a lot from
here to film it.
Yeah. So and then episode 5, I think it's episode 5, is going to be a good one. We've got Tyler joining us and Brianna. So that's Guy's brother and sister-in-law. And we'll be doing an episode on the documentary. So if anyone wants to call in for that episode, if you've seen the documentary and want to call in to talk about it, then that's a good week. But I'm pretty sure it's week 5 for that one. So we're on week 2 now. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And I'm going to put the link for this week's podcast. I'll put the link into the Guys Voice Facebook group, and it will be available on Spotify and Apple, probably in the next 24 hours by the time it gets on there. So please share the links for it, sign the petition and join the Facebook group. But that's everything. So thank you everybody. And thank you again, Jean and Billie.
Say thank you to everybody that's tuned in and everybody that's listening, and will sign the petition. I say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. I know some parts are boring, but it is what it is.
You've got to listen to all of it. You've got to understand it. I mean, you don't have to see, you know, like how messed up the case is. But once you start listening to all of it and breaking everything down, it's absolutely crazy. Completely crazy. Messed up. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everybody.
Thank y'all for listening and all that stuff. Thank you, Jody.
No, thank you for coming on.
Here. I gotta wash this trailer out. All right.
Have fun with that.
I'm still working, y'all. I'm still working.
Have fun.
Bye, y'all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks again. Bye. And thank you, everybody. Please share. Thank you.